11:33 on TSN 690. It is Game Night OT. I am your host, Matthew Ross. We're here till 1 a.m. with my show Game Points at the top of the hour. Talking some NHL here on the show this segment. TSN Matthew on Twitter.com if you'd like to tweet at me during the program. We now welcome in from the fourthperiod.com as well as the magazine. You can also follow him on Twitter.com/thefourthperiod. It is Dave Pagnotta. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, Matthew. How you doing?
I am very well, my friend. Excited for playoffs?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, we don't really have much here in Toronto, but I get to go on the road.
Well, that's good. That's good. Good to hear. Glad there's some road trips involved. Very good. All right, Dave, let's get to it. Now, before we get to the playoffs, I wanted to ask you about Barry Trotz. Now, obviously getting fired by the Predators and a situation where his team was actually 9-1-2 down the stretch. Most of those games were meaningless after they had been eliminated. Nevertheless, they make the change despite the fact that roster was kind of so-so compared to the other 8 Western Conference teams that made the playoffs. Your thoughts on the firing? Is this just a case of Nashville wanting a change of scenery, or is there something more to it? And your thoughts on Barry Trotz?
Well, I think this was a decision that was made. I mean, first of all, this was a very difficult decision for the Predators and David Poile to make. Obviously, Barry Trotz has been there from day one as head coach of the franchise. I'm sure they spoke to Barry about what his intentions were, and to be clear, I mean, it wasn't a firing per se. They're not renewing his contract, so he didn't get canned. It's just we're going to go in a different direction. Now, he was offered a position within the organization in hockey ops, but obviously he's going to field some opportunities elsewhere. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to hear that this might have been a situation that was more or less mutual, because of how long Barry's been there. Maybe this is a situation where he wants to take a look elsewhere and see what other options are available to him. And for Nashville, sometimes you got to do something. You put as much trust in the coach as you can, and because he's been there so long, you give him the benefit of the doubt. But maybe this team needed and wanted a different direction, and maybe that's something the fan base wanted too. So this could have been a situation that could ultimately work out well for both parties. Your thoughts on where he could land? Tough to say. I mean, I think Florida is going to be an opportunity for him. I don't think they're going to bring back. I think they're going to make a change at the coaching position. I think, here in Toronto, quite frankly, I think Randy Carlyle stays, at least for another season. I think they'll make some other coaching changes. I think in Toronto we may see some of the assistants get moved out. They weren't really Randy's guys to begin with. So I could see something like that happening. Carolina, a good chance that Kirk Muller stays. Obviously, Ottawa has made the decision to keep Paul McLean, as they should, quite frankly. Vancouver could be an option if they decide to go in a different direction other than John Tortorella. But I think right now it may be a situation that really works out for Florida and for Barry Trotz. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being the end result for him. Yeah, that's a good place for Barry to go, from one team that can't afford all their players to one that can't afford even less. It's just a sad state for him, and let this guy go somewhere where they can afford players, for goodness sake. But how about Vancouver? How about they get rid of Tortorella and then he goes to Vancouver? I don't agree with getting rid of Torts, quite frankly. I think just like in Toronto, I think you've got half a team in Vancouver, maybe less. You definitely have half a team in Toronto. I think getting rid of the coach is a bit of a BS excuse, especially in Vancouver, where you make the change and you get rid of Gillis, a move that I agree with, and you bring in Trevor Linden. He's going to hire the next GM. Ultimately, that guy's going to decide what's going to happen with Torts. But I don't think getting rid of Tortorella is the answer for the Canucks, just like I don't think getting rid of Carlyle is really the answer for the Leafs. Although, seeing Carlyle as much as I do here in Toronto, I haven't agreed with a lot of his decisions, but I give him the benefit of the doubt in this situation where really the team's just not that good. Chatting with Dave Pagnotta from the fourthperiod.com. Getting into the postseason now, Dave. We'll get your thoughts right away on the Habs-Lightning matchup. No Galchenyuk for Montreal, and of course no Ben Bishop
for Tampa Bay and the Lightning holding home ice advantage. Who do you like in the series?
I like the Habs. I really do. I'm not saying it because I'm on your station. I'm not saying it because I'm from Montreal. I'm saying it because I think that's what's going to happen. The Canadiens, this is going to be a very back and forth type of series in terms of the style of play. It's going to be quick paced series. There's going to be a lot of end to end action, and depending how long Ben Bishop is out for, is really going to dictate how quick this series could really end up. I don't care about the regular season record. I feel like this matchup benefits the Canadiens in their first round. In the first round, obviously it's been set for some time, but I think with the amount of depth that the Habs have, I think they can afford to be without Galchenyuk for the first round in this particular series. I love how the first line has been working out. I love how they've got depth, and guys like Gianta and others have been contributing lately, and I'm interested to see what happens with Dana Briere and where he ends up and what Michel Therrien does in that respect. But I like that. Obviously, you've got to contain Steven Stamkos. You have to contain Ryan Callahan and Valtteri Filppula. You've got to be able to keep an eye on Victor Hedman, who's finally broken out as a star defenseman in this league this season. They've got secondary scoring, but these are young kids that don't have playoff experience and haven't really been there before. That nerves are going to play a factor in the first couple of games in the series. Then it'll be, kind of, okay, guys, we understand what this is about. We'll go from there for some of the Lightning players. But if they can contain Stamkos, if they can, make sure that Ryan Callahan gets out of the crease and isn't in Carey Price's face, then I think the Habs have a really good shot at this one.
Dave, I'm going to go back to that drum I beated last year, which was the San Jose Sharks. Now, Niemi hasn't had the year that he had last year, that he, obviously this year, a little bit of a drop-off. That said, yeah, absolutely. But that said, that series last year was epic between L.A. and San Jose, 7-game series. It was won essentially by having home ice. Each team won all their home games in that series. This time around, San Jose does have that home ice advantage and maybe a little more depth scoring offensively with Hertl. And my X factors is Couture being out during the Olympic break with an injury, and maybe the rest of his body being a little bit more rested than some of those Warriors on LA and even on San Jose. I'm going to take San Jose in this series because of that, those factors I mentioned. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are here. Most are taking the Kings.
And I'm part of that pack. I think this is going to go a full 7 games. It's going to be very back and forth and different than style of play, like between the Habs and Bolts. I think this is going to be back and forth in terms of how these teams perform and who gets the upper edge in one particular game versus the opposition. I think the Kings have a bit of an advantage going in terms of knowing that the goaltender has struggled, that Antti Niemi, if he's going to be the guy throughout this series, and they should start him, obviously, in the first couple of games and see where they go from there. But the LA Kings, the depth that the Kings possess outweighs that of the San Jose Sharks and outweighs that of a lot of teams. It's really going to come down to what Darryl Sutter, the head coach, ends up doing in his matchups against the opposition. So against the San Jose Sharks, which lines is he going to use to combat the top unit of the San Jose Sharks, to combat the secondary scoring unit of the Sharks, and then explode a little bit more, in that respect. Dustin Brown's going to play a big factor in this series. Is he going to be put into, how he has in the last couple of years in a first or second line role in a checking capacity? If he can toss the body around and create some offensive chances and create a little extra room for his other two line mates, then that could really prove to be a difference and a big factor in this series for Los Angeles. Whether he's with Kopitar, whether he's bumped up and put on the line, say with Mike Richards and another scoring winger, and they use that as a bit of an offensive unit, I wouldn't be surprised, a two-way unit where they can shut down the opposition, bang the body using Brown, and play defense using Richards' capabilities, and still be able to spread the offense around on that line. I think that could be pretty effective against the San Jose Sharks' top unit, and trying to contain a guy like Couture, like you said, who is definitely going to be wanting to explode out of the gate in the first game.
Interesting note in that series, you mentioned the shaky Niemi play recently. His backup Stalock, great numbers for the year. 932 save percentage, 12-5-2 record, and a 1.87 goals against average. So it'll be interesting to see how quick head coach McClellan goes to the backup if he does indeed, Niemi does struggle. Elsewhere, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the other good news from an LA standpoint is that Drew Doughty is going to be ready to go and seemingly at 100%.
Best defenseman in the world, I think.
He's up there. He definitely is. And for this guy to not only be ready but be healthy, he took a couple extra games off to recoup and regroup. I think that's going to play a big factor in this series as well. And if they can get him the puck and he can do what he does with it, then that's a bit of an edge for them, too, from that perspective.
All right, and the final question for you, Dave, as we wrap up here. What a bloodbath it'll be, Chicago versus the Blues. Blues won the season series 3 out of 5 games. Obviously, the returning guys, Taves, Kane, you never know what to expect the first couple of games off injury, but everyone and their mom is taking Chicago here. What do you think?
My mom and I are doing the same thing. We're going for... I got the dog in on this one, too. But I don't think it's going to be easy. I think this one's going to definitely go, a full 6 or 7 in this particular series. The thing that I've been saying about St. Louis from the beginning of the season, prior to even before, well before they got Ryan Miller, I liked the goaltending at the time. I still like it now. I love the defense. It's the offense. And yeah, they've got guys that they've been able to spread the puck around, and they got 5 guys that scored 20 or more this season. But they don't have that your prototypical top-tier sniper. They don't have that star goal scorer that they can go to get the job done when they really need it. And you're going to get the secondary scoring because you need that to be competitive and to be a contender. But you also need that guy, that go-to guy that's going to get that big goal when it's counted upon. And I don't think, and I haven't thought all season, that the St. Louis Blues have that. That's really going to be the X factor for them in this series. Chicago's got plenty of guys that can do that. They've got Sharp and Kane and Hossa and Taves, to an extent within that capability. But you look at what the Blues have, and Steen was good when he was healthy this year, and they've got Backes and Oshie and a couple other components on that roster, but they don't have that pure sniper, and that's going to be trouble for them.